Welcome, everyone. So nice to see you all. I am Nicole Dement, the Executive Director for SOLA. I am joined today by my team in leadership at Marge Levy. Hi, Marge. And Jenny Ruffner. Hi, Jenny. The founder of SOLA. And she started SOLA she founded it in 2016. And then 2017, we gave our first award to Gloria Borenstein. All of the information on SOLA's history can be found at solaseattle.org. So I invite you to join us at that website to learn more about SOLA, its history. But today we are excited to talk with Joan Stuart Ross. Joan is a 2022 SOLA Awardee, and she was born in Boston and immigrated to Seattle in 1968. She is a contemporary Northwest artist working in encaustic painting, mixed media, and collage. She maintains a studio in Seattle at Ballard Works and in Nakata, Washington. Did I say that right, Joan?
You did, yes.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I just want to take a moment to make a land acknowledgement, as we are a Washington state nonprofit organization, and we want to show our respect by acknowledging that the lands we stand on are the traditional lands of the Squaxin, Nisqually, and all Coast Salish peoples. We specifically honor today the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Seattle area tribe of the Duwamish people. So again, Joan Stuart Ross is our 2022 SOLA Awardee that is here to talk about passion for color. Thank you so much for joining us today, Joan. Can we get started? Are you ready?
Yes, we can get started. I'm very happy to start talking about and continuing for a while about the colors that I use and the explorations and inventions of color that I'm searching for, their juxtapositions and dynamic arrangements of how I place color and choose color. And I thought it would be fun to start off with my first color teacher was Josef Albers, and his teachings really resonate with me every single day. They came to me in the mid 60s, and for 20 years they kind of bubbled and sat deep within me and came to fruition and came to the fore in the 80s. But I'm going to start off with just showing you a little bit about Josef Albers' class. I was very fortunate to take his class at Yale in the mid 60s. And he started out with ordering us, really, commanding us to buy this array of colors, which he had designed. The hues, which is the name of the colors, and the values of the colors that he chose were contained in this silk screen packet of, they're about 8 by 10 size papers. And those are the papers we had to work with during the class at Yale. It was called the Dynamics of Color. And he was there to teach us what he had discovered as he had worked with color in Germany, and then in North Carolina, and then he had come to New Haven and was teaching dynamics of color to graduate students in art. We spread these colors out, kind of like I spread them here, and we're allowed to choose value, dark value, middle value, and light value for the work that we did. So his first requirement in the class was to work, and he worked on the floor sometimes or on little low tables that we had. And as you can see, these are students probably from the 50s. We can tell by their outfits, a little bit older than our class. We put the colors on the floor, put those pieces of paper that I just showed you on the floor, and tried visually and with one's brain to figure out what would happen if you mixed one color with another, what would be the middle tone? You can see the dark, the value light, and then what would be the middle tone of those two colors if they were mixed physically rather than visually and mentally. And that's what he taught us to figure out. It was, in a way, a science class. Physical manipulation of color with a brush or with material tools was not what he was teaching. He wanted us to be able to think it through and figure out what colors do to each other when they're next to one another, when they are overlaid, and when they are both opaque and transparent. So that's what he had outlaid for us, and it was not an easy class, but he had great jobs for us to do with homework, and I'll show you the next one. One of his homeworks for us was to choose, as I said, a dark, a light, and a middle tone, and here you see the three values, and to go out on the sidewalks of New Haven and find a leaf, and to choose a color of the leaf in addition to the papers that we chose from the stack that we bought. And in this little collage, very small, about 6 by 6 inches, I chose a dark leaf and a dark color, along with the value of the blue, the middle value of the aqua, and the light value of the yellow. And we were to work with these colors so that we could understand their dynamism that they made next to one another. So the next slide shows another of his examples, another of his requirements was to go out and find a lot of these leaves and work with both complementary colors and analogous colors. And in this leaf study, I chose green and red, which are complementary colors, opposite colors on the color wheel. And then various leaves of kind of an ochre, umber, brownish, reddish brown color. These have faded over the last 50 years, but not that much. I still have this collage. And the lesson there was for us to experiment with detail and to find, when we look really closely to the colors, what they do to one another when they are juxtaposed. And I felt that this was a great exercise for me because I loved complementary colors, you know, from Van Gogh and the art that I had studied in college, but wanted to go beyond that, find out what the juxtaposition of colors did to each section and each part. So in the next one, Albers also was interested in our finding our own world with color. He wanted his students, and we were graduate students in art, wanted us to be able to take what he taught and to change it into our own story, our own way of working. And he had us go home with a dark value, my purple, the red, middle tone, and then the gray I chose for the light tone. The other yellowish switchy color is the rubber cement that we used in those days. I went home and wanted to make a kind of imaginary landscape, seascape, skyscape. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but those abstract forms were in my brain somehow. And I put the colors together. It's about 5 by 7. So he had us work very small. And when I brought it in, Josef Albers stopped by my little desk and said, "Ms. Ross, you have created a world there." And that's always stayed with me as the direction and also the solution to what an artist looks for is their own world. a world that they can create from scratch, from just the basics. So I stayed with those remunerations all these years till at least 20 years later, when I came upon working a lot larger. So let's see the next one. Leading me into working larger is a little example here as we go further of a book I made of imposter paintings. And just to show you my interest in both analogous colors and complementary. On the left-hand side, I have all sorts of red, orange, yellows. They're in the same warm tones. They're painted over green, as you can see, which of course is the complement. And then on the right, the blue and the orange as complementary colors. I've always been intrigued by both of these combinations. So the next one is a picture of the book that those, I had 84 of those analogous and complementary paintings in this imposter book that is now in the Bainbridge Island Art Museum, Artist Books Division. So you can see it, you go there and ask for it, or maybe it'll be on display. The next painting is called Stoking. Stoking, where you stoke a fire. And as I was painting this painting, I worked in the studio every day from 3 to 8 p.m. I, at the time, was not nutritionally eating well. I was going over to the 7-Eleven for Cokes, Pepsis, and chocolate bars, and I was really stoked making this painting. It's huge. It's about 7 feet by, well, 5 by 7 feet, diptych. And I was using all sorts of media, energetic marks, as well as dabs and jabs, trying to figure out the lessons I had learned 20 years before and bringing them into fruition, into my own vocabulary and the way I wanted to work with color. I was using acrylic, pastel from my friend in Paris was sending me sommelier pastels, acrylics, pencils, and underneath everything, some dabs and dabs of oil stick. So I wanted to layer these physical elements to bring a warmth and a new way of working to what I would take off with. I was about ready to take off, and I all of a sudden had this decision and vision that what I was creating was new. Even though I was taking Albers, square within a square, homage to the square composition, I was creating something that was full of energy, I had hope, and also had to do with both reflective light and light that was sucked into the painting itself. That was both coming and going. It had a kind of energy to it that came toward the viewer and was taken in by the viewer, by the painting. And I mean, as the painting saw the viewer could see the painting. There's a back and forth kind of kinetic energy, I called it, that was going on. These marks that I made had some of the body width and height of myself as I stood there in my physical presence, but I wanted to have a kind of spirit of energy, a spirit of color and dimensionality that would be almost like a flame or fire. So I titled it Stoking. Some of those marks were, they didn't mean anything really. They were what we call asemic writing, A-S-E-M-I-C. And asemic writing lots of artists use these kinds of textural marks, holographic glyphs to, I think, describe energy and movement. Asemic means with no meaning. The word semantics comes from that word. And the letter A in front means no or away from. So there's no meaning to these, but yet the meaning is in the shape and the form and the energy it carries. So the next slide has a grouping of paintings that came out of Stoking. You can see Stoking there. This is at Foster White Gallery in 1981. And the paintings that really supported one another in that exhibition are around in the gallery, both using complementary colors in several of the works and analogous colors in several of the others, all trying for this light-infused element of transparency and opacity working together, kind of an opposite thing. I think opposites have always been in my work. You know, a lot of artists work with opposites, and I do too. Nicole asked me what feels or what fires my work, what is in charge of the way I feel when I do my work. What are your feelings? She said, and I said, anger and gratitude, both working together in my work. Anger at men's inhumanity to men and women in the world, and gratitude for being here and being able to work. So I use a lot of red. And this is called Furled Looms red. Thinking of the fluttering and the flowing of how color and light combine in the world, and a lot of these marks that have to do with writing, with expressive energy, with physical form. Not an athlete at all, but I do love the idea of throwing out one's arms, throwing out the ends of things, and having them be a sign or a character of what is energetic in life, what is the meaning of life. Well, you never really know, but you can guess at it, and you can maybe get there with some of that energy that you expend and that you take in. Using a lot in these play within plays started me on a series of 22 play within a plays, and this is one of them in back of me. 1982, I did the painting, and 2024, last week, I stood in front of it at the Seattle National Nordic Museum, where it sits in perpetuity in their beautiful museum. And I like to point out, I often wear the colors that I'm using in my work, so you can see that there. It's kind of a fun thing. But the energy on either side of this painting has complementary colors mainly, and a lot of red, yellow, and blue, which for me carry the emblems of primal being. You know, what is simple? Well, what's really simple are those three colors, and using them together and finding out how they can combine into a new dynamism. So the next one. Showing that Furled Looms red painting on the show at the Seattle Art Museum used to have a branch at the Seattle Center called the Poncho Gallery. And this is a show I had of those works where I was following the germ of Furled Looms red. And as you can see, the iridescence on the left-hand side matched with the more opaque side of reds and blues on the right-hand side, and carrying that theme forward in the works to the right, the smaller pieces. I figure that I have three themes. in my work. Depth is what I'm trying to find, depth, make depth. The use of color in a dynamic way, and celebratoriness. Being a joyful maker, person who wants to have my work looked at by people whose day is made better by walking past it. I think that's my aim, my mission in life as an artist. And another fun one, this is a series of paintings I did recently, 2018, of oyster shell shapes. I live part-time every year in Nakata, Washington, which is on the Long Beach Peninsula near the town of Ocean Park. And it is a town called Nakata after Nakati, the chief of the Shoalwater tribe, who used to gather oysters in Willapa Bay. Willapa Bay is a couple of blocks from my studio. So these are oyster shapes, and I'm dressed, I don't know, sort of like an oyster. Well, sort of like those paintings anyway, in a sweater my sister knitted for me. Working series. Here's a series from the pandemic. During the height of the pandemic, 2020, 2021, I worked with a group of artists from Chicago and Santa Fe who gathered together to start a group called the Catalyst Art Lab. And out of the Catalyst Art Lab came Brave Space, which was a workshop I joined to make work that had to do with being brave. Going out, and yeah, you had to touch a doorknob. You had to go back into the world and not just stay in a secure island. You had to be able to move outward. And we started working really big. These are all 50 by, at least 50 by 75, 72 to 76 inches on rag paper. Been thinking of going big, but here I succeeded in working very freely, experimenting, thinking as small, spending as much little time as possible thinking, and working only from the spirit and from the heart. You'll see a couple of these later. This is one called Pomona. Pomona, the goddess of fertility, growth, germination, using the shapes of circular forms, as well as cut pieces of drawing. And I had been, during the pandemic, working on drawings that had to do with the crossword puzzles my husband was completing and giving me the sheets of paper with all the little letters going every direction and the solution to the puzzle when there was no solution to any puzzle. We were all in a maze, M-A-Z-E. It was an amazing maze. And I was doing drawings of both crossword formations and mazes that I think were connected to my love of Carolingian art that I had seen in Norwegian stave churches when I had visited many of them in Southwest Norway with Kristi Odesaker, my beloved friend from art school. And she had been living in Norway for many years. And I'd seen so much of this kind of interlocking drawing that had a way in, but no way out unless you knew the clue of how to get out. So this seemed a perfect icon for the pandemic and for the work I was doing. And of course, again, I was using the colors that were the vehicle for me for energy and the use of these shapes, the red, the yellow, and the blue, the primary colors that I always seem to be drawn to and pick up and use as a tool for the energy I would like to imbue my art with. In this photograph, I'm standing at Riverseed Gallery in Astoria, Oregon, with some of these large works, just showing their stretch that they have and how I really wanted to move down pathways and have a way out of the conundrum that we were all in. This is 2021. In 2022, I did a series of work that had to do with weaving and stitching and my ideas about the future. And the colors I used, again, are these primary colors. I covered the surface with reds. A group of reds that I used were multiple reds, several, many, 7, 8, 9. I'd mix them all up and cover my surface with red, and then choose other colors that would combine with the red to make various values. And I call this painting Auger Weave. It's about 5 feet by 8 feet. I had wanted to make stitchery kinds of marks that had flailing ends and shapes that went off into space that didn't connect, but that yet all put together made a kind of fabric, a covering, maybe something that had to do with safety in the future. Auger, a sort of idea of wondering what the future would like. What would the future augur? What would it bring? And I was wondering about this, using again my favorite, warmth in colors. I wanted that warm hearth that color created when I used reds, yellows, and the complements of blues and purple. So Auger Weave led me into a new group of drawings and paintings. This is a group of new paintings, newish paintings, 2022, 2023, and what I'm working on now coming up. And here we chose 3 primary paintings, a red, a blue, and a yellow. They're all about 3 feet by 5 feet in size. They're all on rag paper, these happen to be. And on the left is Phenomenon, where the color and the energy of the drawing make an arc of movement, motion, energy. And then on the left-hand side, they meld. The warmth melds with the cool. And the drawings of the mazes and the knots are cut up and make an arc as well. So taking the viewer off into the other side of the painting and metaphorically into the other side of your station in life, where you are now, what's in the future for you. The center one is called Blue Note, and it's a painting where, let's see that blue, yeah, the blue in there, where it's a bunch of scribbles. I realized a couple years ago that my favorite thing to do after 50 years of making paintings is to scribble and not think too much. I've been thinking a lot all these years after a great education and reading and teaching and being taught. But then I decided, when you scribble, you don't really need to think. You just go for it. And I do. I just go for it in these works with my color and the energy of my hand and the motion of iconography. I want to make a symbol. I want to have meaning in the symbol that maybe will never be discovered, but which is trying to be discovered. There's no answer. You've got to get there, but you don't necessarily know how. And I think that's what I'm doing with these works. It's sort of the Socratic method I used in my teaching to suggest, but never to describe or be controlling or directorial. Always to try to be suggestive in both my work and in my teaching. On the right-hand side is a piece that's called Yellow Cosmos. And I'd been working on this for a couple of years, but had never really resolved it until I made it be a glimpse into the unknown using these drawings of mine, the crosswords, and the mazes, and pushing them back into space, literally and conceptually. I was thinking of space and the various layers of color. I'd been working on it so much that the colors all melded into each other, but yet showed peaks and small areas of every color in the rainbow. I'd been working so hard on this piece. It's very heavy. It's oil and acrylic and collage drawings on rag paper. The cosmos, you know, a metaphor for the unknown. Well, this series too includes me in my studio working on Yellow Cosmos. See it back there. This is a portrait taken by Joanna Priestley, who's an animator in Portland, very well-known filmmaker. And she's the one that said, wow, your work is kinetic. I said, yeah, kinetic, motion, movement, wonderment in the space, wonderment in the action. But try not to get bogged down with the science, even though I was educated in a scientific way. I try to let the science sit and move away from the specific way to do things into a hopefully an adventuresome and inventive way of working with color. You can see a yellow canvas being started underneath both of those drawings. On the right is juicy fruits. So they're becoming hanging fruits. I think I'll finish that drawing too. And I'm wearing colors that I use in my work again. In my studio here and at home in Ballard, I've made real intense use of the cut-up drawings that I've made out of the crosswords and the mazes. So on the left, there are two pieces from a new series called Archipelago. And the archipelago refers to a bunch of things. One of them is that all my career, I've worked with various media and forms. I really haven't repeated the same series twice, although I've returned to my roots many times. And here I'm kind of returning to my roots in using the encaustic. I've been working with encaustic since 1994 when I took a workshop at Pratt with Dale Lindemann. And that's 30 years now of encaustic, as well as my other media that I love. And the glow and the translucency of encaustic really brings me to the combination, to use it with the combination of the drawings. The drawings have air holes in them. They have spaces in them to enter and exit from. On the left is Lamentation, which was inspired by Giotto's 1300-ish, around the early 1300s AD, painting of Lamentation, where his figures become foreshortened and they're coming at you through the sky. They're aimed for you as they come to lament. The end of Jesus's trials and how he becomes off the cross and his mother is grieving along with friends. And out of the sky come these little angels with tears in their eyes, but they're all foreshortened. And this is the beginning, really, of the Renaissance and of three-dimensionality and of the use of color as emotion. I think Giotto, if you look at Giotto's work, you will find that the emotive quality of his work is brought to you as if you were through the color that he chooses. It's kind of pastel now, you know, a lot of time has passed, but they are intriguing and passionate and spiritual paintings that depend on the color that Giotto, the genius painter, used in his work. So I'm very influenced and inspired by his work. On the right-hand side is a new painting of mine in this series, Archipelago, called Vessels. And I had titled it Beaker, Pitcher, Magazine, thinking of shapes that hold both wine and honey and water, the way magazines used to in ancient Knossos on the island of Crete. The vessels that held the necessities of life were called magazines. But I decided to change it to vessels because I started to think of how vessels also hold air and they hold space. And we say that when we hold space for something, we are really making an embrace of usually a person's emotional life, a person's struggles, and holding space is really the subject of this painting, but it is helped by the choice of the colors that I picked, the warmth of reds and yellows. The series I'm working on right now in my studio they're cloud paintings. They're called Pink Cloud on the left. This is Think Cloud. And think, you know, we say I think a lot. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you read the new Nobel Prize winners' books, that's Jan Fosse from Norway. His protagonist is an artist, and that artist has a doppelganger. He and his doppelganger, his alter ego, say, I think, every other word. And it's amazing because we think we know what we're doing. We think we are in charge. But really, we have to stop and wonder if we really are. We go ahead, we choose, in my case, on the left, cool colors on top of warm, and on the right, again, very few, but some cool colors on top of the warm. But really, these paintings are about thinking, and they're about using my crosswords, my mazes, again, as subjects for thought. What do I think? How can I know? And usually the answers to those questions are totally unfathomable. There's no way to know. There's no way to be sure. But we do say, I think a lot and act upon our interior motives, what our intuition is, and how much we love red, and how much we love the primaries. So I think that to end with these pieces, because they're the start of a new series, is really important for me, because even though I think you can't think too much, my a teacher from way back said not to think too much, but to always be in your studio, whether you're thinking or not, reading, sitting there, then you will have the chance for grace to come down from above, the muse, so that you can continue to work with a kind of spiritual connection if you're there. If you're not there, it won't work, but you have to be present. This last slide shows me at work in my Mikado studio with some of the works I've shown you in this chat. Pomona on the table, auger weave on the left, and phenomenon on the right. Photograph my friend Sarah Shiver, who's a filmmaker in Portland, took it. She jumped from tabletop to tabletop to catch me from above, and it really carries the quality of intensity and being surrounded by the things I love to do, the colors I love to work with. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. I am so inspired. I want to go grab some color right now. But before I do, it is a great time for the Q&A. So if anybody has questions, if you'd like to enter those into the chat. We do have a relatively small group, but we could unmute if that is easier for you. Meanwhile, I wanted to go back to lamentation, however you pronounce that. Feel free to correct me. This is the one that in this selection seems to be the most monochrome to me. And can you speak a little bit about, I mean, there's so much, the way that you're using color is these complementaries, the analogous, and you're speaking so much about how you're feeling about things. And this one is, I know you said the crosswords and the mazes were really brought forth during the pandemic. There's so many questions in this, and where I might use color in the energetic sense to feel confused, it's almost like maybe this one is one solid color with using these icons to represent the confusion of the pandemic. Can you speak to your use of color and maybe any feedback on that or ideas, thoughts?
Sure. Well, I covered the panel. This is a 24 by 24 inch piece with red, first of all. So underneath the yellow is red. And then there was a middle yellow that I mixed with red. And then on top of it, I used the cadmium yellow, a couple of different cadmium yellow deep and cadmium yellow light, and a little bit of Hansa yellow, which is kind of a orangey yellow. It's not really pure yellow the way the cadmiums are. On top of that, so there are three yellows and then red under everything. You can see a little bit of the glow of red when you see the painting. But I started, yeah, see there's a little bit of red, not much around, because I pretty much wanted to cover it up with the yellow. I was thinking of, okay, I'm going to make a series with primary colors and a couple of reds, a couple of yellows, a couple of blues. That's as far as I've thought about it. So it just happens to be one with pretty much all yellow. Just
I
love
think that
yellow.
I love it on here, and I love your explanation of it. You really help us to understand how that very foundational beginning with Albers with the analogous colors. I mean, I look at this, of course, it's on the screen, and I'm taking it for granted because I'm not really investigating and exploring it. But you're really sharing now that you have all of these different colors of yellow. And how
Yeah,
beautiful is that? Thank you so much.
yeah, you're welcome. I really love yellow, and it's kind of a post-pandemic color, I think, because it makes us think of, it makes us think of the sun. And we don't have a lot here for 9 months, but for 3 months we do. And we yearn for the sun, and I think that it inspires me to reach for the yellow a lot in many of my works. And it's if it's not underlying things with along with red, it's on top. And then I see that Marge asked a question.
Yeah.
Marge said, "Why do you use crosswords?" Let's see, what did you say? It's not coming up again.
Yeah, that was the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you explore more about your crosswords with us?
Well, during the pandemic times, I sat at home with my colors in the living room on a table that my husband set up for me because I was afraid to go out to my studio, even though the governor said, if you work alone, it's okay. Go and work alone. But I was afraid to touch doorknobs of doors where other people had come and gone. So for a few months, I stayed at home, and he was doing these crosswords, one after the other after the other. And it was his way to deal, I think. And every time he finished one, he kind of put it in the stack. And I was looking at them, and at the same time, I was thinking of how we were listening to lives during that time. And I was very aggrieved because people my age, many millions of people my age were dying at the top of their form when they had reached 60s and 70s, at the absolute top of their form in all of the arts. It was very, very hard time for all of us. And so when I saw these little crosswords with words that had definitions, sometimes a riddle, sometimes not, sometimes something which I could answer if it related to Greek mythology or a word that had come from the Latin, because I'd studied Latin at Latin school in Boston. I could answer those things, but the rest of it was a mystery. And so I thought if I worked with those crossword papers, which were right there, they were a symbol for me for the search for a new language, a truth that might come out of the pandemic times. And at first I started with black and white, but then I started using the primary colors to get down, for me, to the nitty gritty. Primary meaning the first things that come, the initial, the beginning. And the primary colors for me are that. So it was a combination of both the definition, the definitions that I saw John had found, and the questions, and how nobody knew the answer to anything, but yet we were struggling. So for me, they were the solution to that struggle. They were small, and I was working close and dealing with shapes that had always been somewhere in my mind.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have some questions in the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Love hearing Joan speak about her work. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I adore all of the colors you use. You've taught me over the years to be free and show up. Thanks for that. I'm painting every day for 5 to 8 hours. These paintings remind me of the times I've done music in Australia, Aboriginal Dreams. They remind me of that deep storytelling. That's from Laurie Davis Sandoval. And Leslie Jane asked, please talk a bit about the black and white lined collage pieces and why you are inspired to use them.
Okay. I first wanted to say the teacher who taught me to show up with his telling me about grace and the muses, Jack Borkoff. some of you may know his work. It's abstract minimalism. That's what his work looks like, but it's not that minimal really, because what guides him is that saying that he gave to his students: show up and grace will come upon you. So the black and white, I think for me, in the very beginning, embodied my love of drawing. And in graduate school, we drew the figure. After Yale, I went to the University of Iowa and studied drawing there, painting and printmaking with Mauricio Lisansky. So I had these great teachers all through, and linear quality in drawing and in printmaking were very informative for me and inspiring, of course, and very inductive. I mean, I learned a lot from the line quality that was emphasized at that time. Not necessarily, we didn't necessarily work with shades of charcoal, the shading of dark to light. We worked with line, and line showed dimension as well as value. So I think that background has led me into working when I draw to use linear shapes and forms. So that's where it all came from. And then, studying ancient art and art from the past has a lot to do with line, because art used to be on church fronts, linear shapes and forms of figures, so that people who passed by didn't have to be rich and afford a book. They didn't have to be able to read, but they could look at line as it decorated various buildings. And I think that's been a big influence on me as well.
That's beautiful. And I just want to make sure that people understand that these are your drawings.
Yes.
These where the crossword puzzles are obviously crossword puzzles. These are actual drawings that you did and then cut up and put on your painting.
Yes. And then I draw over the crossword paper. The paper does not just sit there with the crosswords on it. You can see upper left here, or maybe if you can go here. I would draw and sketch and jigger my pen around. And this one on the left, you can see some of the definitions. Over here, I bring in my arabesque into the crossword itself and just use the crossword as a background and as an instigator, kind of. You can see under here, there's some definitions. And they're cut up into little pieces in this particular drawing. But in other drawings, I have the whole sheet as a reinvention of the crossword. The crossword sometimes isn't even visible, just the letters are, and the unintelligible language.
Mm-hmm. And I know, I'm sorry if you've already answered this, but did you tell us here about what you were doing with these line drawings during the pandemic? What you were exploring?
Well, I was trying to have some sort of symbolic search for what would embody an idea of the truth. How could I find the truth? How come I can't tell the truth? What is the problem with the way we're surrounded with so many lies? And I think that's what I was looking for. And here were these letters, these forms that had to do with the unknown words, the words that had been the riddle that the person doing the crossword was working with. So here you can see in this one, there's quite a few crosswords with drawing throughout, like this right-hand side. I cover the letters with graphic stuff, linear arabesques and curlicues. I just love to draw that way with the line.
Thank you so much for all of this information and this inspiration.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure to do it. And I love talking about art in general and my own art as well. So thanks
Yeah.
again.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. We are here to support our artists that are SOLA awardees, and without you, it would be hard to do that. So I am thankful to see each of you. Thank you for joining us. This will be recorded, so if you would like to review this again or share it, we will be sharing this in our newsletter and on our YouTube channel soon. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Joan. Yay.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.